On the morning of February 23, 1945, at 0600 hours, Sergeant John Turner crouched behind a shattered palm tree on the black volcanic sands of Iwo Jima, watching a concrete pillbox 200 yards away through the smoke of naval bombardment. At 24 years old, he was a veteran of Palayu with 0 bunker kills, facing an enemy that had built over 700 fortified positions across the 8-square-mile island. Bunkers that had already claimed 43 Marines from his battalion in just the first 72 hours of fighting. His commanding officer had told him the Japanese concrete was too thick, and the other squad leaders joked that his bazooka was just a fancy pipe bomb on a stick. When Turner had first been assigned the M9A1 rocket launcher back at Camp Pendleton, the armorer even asked whether it was meant for tanks or tin cans. Turner told him it was for bunkers, but the unit shipped out before he could prove it, leaving him to spend weeks on transport ships watching others clean their rifles, while his rocket launcher sat unused in the weapons rack. He carried 14 pounds of launcher plus 6 3.5-pound rockets, compared to the standard Garand's 9 pounds with no explosive capability. His weapon was single shot with shaped charges. The rifle was semi-automatic with bullets. The battalion had already tried direct assault, flamethrowers, and satchel charges against the pillboxes, losing men with each attempt. By that morning, the Marines had been fighting on Iwo Jima for 4 brutal days, advancing only 600 yards from the beach while taking over 900 casualties. The Japanese had turned the island into a fortress of interconnected bunkers, caves, and pillboxes, built from reinforced concrete, volcanic rock, and steel, positions that naval bombardment and artillery had barely scratched. Turner's company attacked the airfield defenses on February 20th and fought for 3 days, losing 17 killed and 68 wounded before finally reaching the edge of the runway. Turner had still not fired his bazooka in combat. The terrain around the airfield was different. No jungle cover, just open ground swept by interlocking machine gun fire from concrete bunkers that seemed impossible to destroy. Many of the Japanese positions were manned by veteran soldiers with years of defensive preparation, patient and familiar with their kill zones. On February 21st, a machine gun nest killed Private Davis while he was crossing open ground. On the 22nd, another killed 4 men from Fox Company. That same day, 2 more died trying to assault a pillbox that seemed undamaged despite direct hits from 60mm mortars. That night, the company commander summoned Turner. The Japanese bunkers were killing his Marines faster than they could advance, and he needed someone who could break them open. He asked whether that rocket launcher could actually punch through concrete. Turner explained that the M6A3 rocket used a shaped charge designed to focus explosive force into a penetrating jet, theoretically capable of piercing 12 inches of concrete or 16 inches of homogeneous steel armor. The commander gave him until dawn to prove it. But everything Turner had been told about bunker assault was wrong. The weapon that would change everything arrived at Guadalcanal in December 1942. Packed in wooden crates marked M1A1 rocket launcher, alongside thousands of other pieces of military hardware that few Marines understood. The official designation was the 2.36-inch rocket launcher, but the men called it the bazooka after a musical instrument the comedian Bob Burns played on the radio, a long, funnel-shaped contraption that looked remarkably similar to their new anti-tank weapon. At 12 pounds and 3/4, it was lighter than the boys' anti-tank rifle the British used, but heavier than any weapon a single infantryman was expected to carry into assault. The launcher itself was a simple steel tube 44 inches long with a shoulder stock, hand grips, and electrical firing mechanism. The real innovation was the rocket, a 3.5-pound projectile with a shaped charge warhead designed to concentrate explosive force into a narrow jet capable of penetrating armor plate. Most commanders looked at the specifications and saw a tank killer. The shaped charge could punch through 4 inches of face-hardened armor at 150 yards, more than enough to disable any Japanese tank they might encounter in the Pacific. The problem was that Japanese tanks were rare in the island campaigns. The Type 97 Chiha medium tanks were too heavy to transport easily and too vulnerable to naval gunfire to risk in beach defenses. What the Japanese had instead were bunkers, concrete pillboxes, coral rock fortifications, reinforced cave mouths, and interconnected tunnel systems that turned entire islands into fortress networks. These positions were designed to withstand naval bombardment and artillery, with walls thick enough to absorb direct hits from 5-inch naval guns and firing slits narrow enough to make targeting nearly impossible. The first test came during the cleanup operations on Guadalcanal in February 1943. A Marine patrol encountered a Japanese bunker near the Cochabamba River, a concrete structure with walls 18 inches thick and a single machine gun embrasure facing the trail. The position had been bypassed during the main offensive, but continued to harass supply convoys with periodic bursts of fire. Artillery had been called in twice, cratering the ground around the bunker, but leaving the structure intact. A direct assault had been attempted with satchel charges, resulting in 2 Marines killed and 4 wounded when the demolition team was caught in the open by machine gun fire. Corporal Mike Stevens carried the bazooka forward to within 70 yards of the bunker, using a fallen log for cover while his loader, Private Danny Walsh, prepared the first rocket. The M6A1 shape charge round weighed 3 pounds and 6 ounces, with a copper line cone designed to focus the explosive force forward upon detonation. Stevens aimed at the machine gun embrasure, accounting for the slight drop of the rocket over 70 yards and the crosswind coming off the river. The electrical firing circuit sent current through 2 wires running the length of the rocket, igniting the propellant charge that accelerated the projectile to 850 feet per second. The rocket struck the concrete 6 inches to the right of the embrasure, penetrating the wall and detonating inside the bunker. The shaped charge created a jet of superheated gases and molten metal that sprayed through the interior at 15,000 feet per second, instantly killing the 3 Japanese soldiers inside and destroying their Type 96 machine gun. More importantly, it demonstrated that the bazooka's shaped charge could defeat concrete fortifications just as effectively as tank armor. The principle was identical. Concentrate explosive force into a narrow point of impact, creating a penetrating jet that could breach barriers previously considered impregnable to infantry weapons. Word spread quickly through the Marine divisions preparing for the next phase of island-hopping operations. The bazooka might be designed for tanks, but it could kill bunkers. Tactical manuals were hastily rewritten to include bunker-busting procedures. The standard technique became a 2-man team approach. The gunner would identify a target and select a covered firing position within effective range, while the loader prepared rockets and watched for counterfire. Effective range against bunkers was listed as 150 yards, but combat experience showed that accuracy dropped significantly beyond 100 yards, especially when targeting narrow embrasures or firing slits. The weapon's limitations became apparent during training exercises at Camp Pendleton in Quantico. The electrical firing system was prone to moisture damage in tropical conditions, requiring careful maintenance and waterproofing. The rocket's trajectory was relatively flat out to 75 yards, but dropped noticeably beyond that range, making long-distance shots difficult. Most critically, the shaped charge was designed for homogeneous steel armor, not the varied construction materials used in Japanese fortifications. Concrete and steel could be penetrated reliably, but coral rock, reinforced earth, or layered log and sand construction often absorbed or deflected the penetrating jet. Training protocols emphasized the bazooka as the first phase of bunker assault, not a complete solution. The rocket would ideally penetrate the firing aperture or breach the wall, killing or stunning the defenders inside, and creating an opening for follow-up assault. Demolition teams with satchel charges would then move forward to complete the destruction, while flamethrower teams cleared any surviving occupants. The bazooka's role was to crack open the bunker and suppress defensive fire long enough for other weapons to finish the job. By mid-1943, Marine rifle companies were being issued bazookas at the rate of 1 per platoon, with additional weapons held at company level for special operations. The Army's island assault formations received similar allocations, though their tactics differed slightly based on unit organization and available support weapons. Each bazooka team required extensive training in target identification, range estimation, and coordination with other assault elements. The gunner needed steady nerves and good judgment to identify the optimal firing position and angle of attack. The loader required speed and reliability under fire, as well as the ability to spot targets and direct fire when visibility was limited. The psychological impact on American troops was immediate and significant. For the first time since landing in the Pacific, infantry squads had a weapon that could directly challenge Japanese bunkers without waiting for artillery support or naval gunfire. The bazooka gave squad leaders tactical flexibility and reduced their dependence on higher headquarters for fire support. More importantly, it offered hope to Marines and soldiers who had watched friends die in failed frontal assaults against concrete positions that seemed impossible to destroy. What none of them understood yet was how profoundly the weapon would affect their enemies, and how quickly Japanese confidence in their fortress warfare would begin to crumble once American infantry started carrying shaped charges into battle. The distribution system for rocket launchers evolved rapidly as Pacific operations expanded throughout 1944. Each Marine rifle company received 3 M1A1 bazookas initially, with one assigned to each rifle platoon's weapons squad. The gunner carried the launcher itself, while his loader hauled 6 to 8 rockets in canvas bags, plus additional rounds distributed among other squad members when the tactical situation demanded extended operations. The total load per team ranged from 42 to 56 pounds of specialized equipment, not counting personal weapons and standard infantry gear. Army formations followed similar allocation patterns, though some units experimented with concentrating bazookas at company level rather than distributing them to individual platoons. Training protocols emphasized the two-phase assault sequence that had emerged from Guadalcanal combat reports. Phase 1 involved the bazooka team maneuvering to within effective range of the target bunker, establishing a covered firing position with clear lines of sight to critical vulnerability points. Preferred targets included firing embrasures, ventilation openings, doorways, and structural weak points where walls met roof lines or foundations. The shaped charge needed to penetrate the bunker envelope to be effective. Glancing hits against thick concrete or coral surfaces often failed to create the focused jet necessary for interior damage. Phase 2 began immediately after rocket impact, when assault squads would advance under cover of the explosion's suppressive effect. Demolition teams carried 20-pound satchel charges containing composition C2 explosive designed to complete structural destruction that the bazooka had initiated. Flamethrower operators followed closely behind, using portable M22 units with napalm-thickened fuel to clear any surviving defenders from cave mouths or tunnel entrances. The entire sequence from rocket firing to bunker clearance typically required 3 to 5 minutes, during which supporting units provided suppressive fire against adjacent positions that might interfere with the assault. Combat experience revealed significant variations in effective range depending on terrain and target characteristics. Official manuals listed 150 yards as maximum effective range, but field reports consistently showed much shorter engagement distances in actual combat. Dense jungle canopy on islands like Bougainville and New Britain limited visibility to 50 yards or less in many areas, while coral ridgelines on Tarawa and Majuro provided longer sight lines but created challenging ballistic problems due to elevation changes and crosswinds. Most successful bunker engagements occurred at ranges between 30 and 70 yards, where rocket trajectory remained relatively flat and target identification was unambiguous. The weapon's technical limitations became more apparent as operations intensified. Moisture infiltration remained a persistent problem despite improved waterproofing techniques, with electrical firing failures occurring in approximately 8% of attempted shots during the Marshall Islands campaign. The rocket's fin-stabilized design performed well in calm conditions, but proved vulnerable to strong crosswinds common on exposed atolls and coral ridges. More significantly, the shape charge's effectiveness varied dramatically depending on bunker construction materials and techniques. Japanese defensive engineering had evolved considerably since the early war period, incorporating lessons learned from Guadalcanal and other American successes. Standard concrete bunkers with steel reinforcement remained vulnerable to bazooka attack, but newer construction methods posed serious challenges. Coral block walls bonded with concrete mortar absorbed much of the shape charge's penetrating energy, while layered construction using alternating coral, sand, and log materials often deflected or dispersed the molten jet before it could reach the interior. Cave positions carved directly into volcanic rock or coral limestone proved nearly immune to rocket attack unless the shape charge could be delivered directly through a natural opening. Lieutenant Colonel James Harrison's after-action report from Kwajalein detailed the tactical evolution occurring in real time as Marine units adapted to these challenges. Bazooka teams began working in coordination with reconnaissance elements to identify bunker construction types before attempting rocket attacks. Concrete and steel structures received immediate rocket fire, while coral or earth-reinforced positions were bypassed for demolition teams or flame units. This target classification system reduced ammunition waste and improved assault timing, but required additional intelligence gathering that sometimes exposed reconnaissance personnel to defensive fire. The psychological dimension of bazooka employment became increasingly apparent as Japanese prisoners began providing intelligence about defender reactions. Corporal Hiroshi, captured after the fall of Roinamur, described the terror that swept through his bunker crew when they first heard the distinctive whoosh of approaching rockets. The sound was unlike artillery or mortar fire, arriving with minimal warning and creating a focused blast that penetrated their supposedly impregnable concrete walls. Previous American weapons had required direct hits to be effective, allowing defenders to take cover during bombardments and resume firing afterward. The bazooka's shaped charge eliminated that safety margin, making any bunker with visible openings potentially vulnerable to sudden destruction. Japanese defensive tactics began adapting to counter the new threat. Bunker designers started incorporating multiple sharp turns in entrance tunnels to prevent shaped charges from penetrating to interior spaces. Firing embrasures were made smaller and fitted with steel shutters that could be closed during rocket attacks. Some positions abandoned fixed firing ports entirely, relying instead on camouflaged rifle loopholes that could be opened and closed rapidly. These modifications reduced the bunker's offensive firepower, but significantly improved survivability against rocket attack. The adaptation cycle accelerated as both sides refined their techniques through combat experience. American bazooka teams learned to target structural supports and ventilation systems when direct penetration proved difficult. Multiple rocket attacks against the same bunker often achieved cumulative damage that single shots could not accomplish. Japanese defenders responded by improving camouflage and deception, constructing dummy positions to draw rocket fire away from actual defensive emplacements. Supply logistics for rocket launcher operations created new challenges for Marine and Army quartermasters. Each M6A1 rocket cost approximately $12 to manufacture, making bazooka ammunition more expensive per round than most other infantry weapons. Combat consumption rates varied widely depending on target density and construction types, but typical rifle companies expended between 20 and 40 rockets per day during active bunker clearing operations. This consumption required dedicated ammunition supply chains and forward storage facilities, adding complexity to already strained logistics networks. The weapon's success rate against different target types became a critical factor in tactical planning. Analysis of combat reports from the Marshall Islands showed penetration rates of 85% against concrete bunkers, 60% against coral block construction, and only 30% against earth and log positions. These statistics influenced pre-assault intelligence requirements and weapon allocation decisions, with bazooka teams concentrated against areas known to contain concrete fortifications, while other weapons handled earthwork positions. As American forces prepared for the next phase of Pacific operations, the bazooka had proven itself as a valuable addition to infantry firepower, but its limitations were equally clear. The weapon worked best as part of integrated assault teams rather than as a standalone bunker-busting solution. The island of Peleliu appeared deceptively small from the transport ships anchored offshore on September 14, 1944, a coral speck barely 6 miles long and 2 miles wide that intelligence reports suggested could be secured within 4 days. The 1st Marine Division had trained extensively for beach assault operations, but nothing in their preparation had anticipated what Colonel Kunio Nakagawa had constructed during 8 months of intensive fortification. The Japanese had abandoned traditional beach defense tactics after studying American amphibious operations throughout the Central Pacific, instead carving defensive positions directly into the coral limestone ridges that dominated the island's interior. The Umur-Brogol Pocket, as Marines would later name it, represented the evolution of Japanese defensive engineering into something approaching underground warfare. Natural coral caves had been expanded and connected with tunnels, creating a three-dimensional defensive network that extended down through multiple levels of the ridge system. Surface bunkers were camouflaged with vegetation and positioned to provide interlocking fields of fire across approaches that appeared undefended from aerial reconnaissance. The coral limestone proved ideal for excavation, while providing natural protection against naval bombardment that had devastated Japanese positions on previous islands. Sergeant Turner's bazooka team landed with the 3rd Wave on White Beach 1, struggling across coral sand under sporadic mortar fire from positions that remained invisible despite 3 days of preliminary bombardment. The M9A1 rocket launcher he now carried represented the latest evolution of the weapon, with an improved electrical firing system and compatibility with the new M6A3 rockets that delivered 20% more explosive power than earlier models. His loader, Private Sam Jenkins, carried 8 rockets in waterproof containers, while additional rounds were distributed among their rifle squad to maintain sustained fire capability during extended operations. The first major test came on September 18th during the assault on Hill 200, a coral ridge position that commanded the approaches to the airfield. Intelligence reports had identified concrete bunkers and pillboxes throughout the ridge complex, making it an ideal target for rocket launcher operations. Turner's team maneuvered to within 60 yards of a suspected bunker entrance, using bomb craters for concealment while observing the target through field glasses. The position appeared to be a standard concrete emplacement with a narrow firing embrasure facing the marine approach route. Jenkins loaded an M6A3 rocket, while Turner aligned the launcher's iron sights on the center of the embrasure. The shaped charge warhead contained 4 pounds of composition. B, explosive, arranged around a copper cone liner designed to create a penetrating jet upon detonation. At 60 yards range, the rocket should penetrate the concrete and create devastating interior effects against any defenders inside the bunker. Turner squeezed the trigger mechanism, sending electrical current through the firing circuit and igniting the rocket's propellant charge. The rocket struck the concrete wall 6 inches below the embrasure, penetrating the surface but failing to detonate properly. Instead of the focused explosion that should have created interior devastation, the warhead produced a diffuse blast that cracked the concrete without penetrating to the bunker's interior. Return fire from the position indicated that the defenders remained combat effective, forcing Turner's team to withdraw under covering fire from their supporting rifle squad. The failure pattern repeated throughout the ridge complex, as bazooka teams discovered that Peleliu's defensive positions were unlike anything they had encountered previously. Many apparent bunkers were actually cave mouths that had been reinforced with concrete facades, creating a thin shell over natural coral chambers that extended deep into the ridge. The shaped charge's penetrating jet, optimized for homogeneous steel or concrete, proved less effective against the layered construction that combined artificial and natural materials. When rockets did penetrate the surface concrete, the blast often dissipated harmlessly in the large coral caverns behind the defensive positions. Japanese defenders had also modified their tactics to counter rocket launcher attacks. Machine gun crews no longer remained in fixed positions after opening fire, instead withdrawing deeper into the cave systems through prepared tunnel networks. When bazooka teams maneuvered into firing positions, they often found themselves targeting empty emplacements while the actual defenders repositioned to alternate firing points. This cat-and-mouse warfare frustrated American assault tactics that depended on suppressing defenders long enough for demolition teams to advance. The tactical adaptation process accelerated as Marine units experimented with modified techniques during the battle's second week. Some bazooka teams began firing multiple rockets at the same target, attempting to achieve cumulative structural damage that single shots could not accomplish. Others targeted ventilation shafts and tunnel entrances rather than firing embrasures, hoping to collapse cave systems or create smoke and overpressure effects that would force defenders to abandon their positions. These techniques showed occasional success, but consumed ammunition at unsustainable rates and often required extended exposure to defensive fire. Corporal Hiroshi's bunker crew had prepared extensively for rocket attacks based on intelligence gathered from previous American operations. When the first bazooka round struck their position on September 21st, the 3-man team immediately implemented their withdrawal protocol, moving through a prepared tunnel to an alternate firing position 30 yards away. The shaped charge had penetrated their concrete wall and destroyed their primary machine gun, but the crew survived in a deeper chamber and resumed defensive fire from their secondary position within minutes of the attack. The psychological impact of rocket attacks remained significant despite their reduced lethality against cave positions. Japanese soldiers reported that the distinctive sound of approaching bazookas created immediate anxiety, even when their positions were effectively immune to penetration. The weapons represented a new category of threat that could potentially reach previously safe rear areas, forcing defenders to remain constantly alert for rocket teams infiltrating their perimeter. This psychological pressure accumulated over weeks of continuous combat, contributing to the gradual degradation of Japanese defensive effectiveness. Marine casualties mounted steadily as traditional infantry assault tactics proved inadequate against the modified defensive positions. Flamethrower teams advancing after bazooka attacks often found themselves engaging empty bunkers while receiving fire from alternate positions that had not been identified during reconnaissance. Demolition squads with satchel charges faced similar challenges, as Japanese defenders could retreat through tunnel systems and reoccupy positions after explosive charges had been placed and detonated. The integration of tank support with bazooka teams produced better results when terrain permitted armored operations. Sherman tanks with 75mm guns could deliver high explosive rounds directly into cave mouths, creating blast effects that shaped charges could not match. Bazooka teams working in coordination with armor could suppress alternate firing positions while tanks engaged primary targets, preventing the defensive repositioning that had frustrated earlier attacks. However, much of Peleliu's ridge terrain remained inaccessible to armored vehicles, forcing infantry to rely on portable weapons alone. By October 1st, after 2 weeks of continuous combat, Marine units had developed new tactical procedures specifically for cave warfare. Bazooka teams now worked in pairs, with one launcher targeting known positions, while the second watched for muzzle flashes from alternate firing points. Engineering units brought forward portable demolitions and flame equipment designed to clear tunnel systems methodically rather than attempting to suppress individual defensive positions. The battle was evolving beyond simple bunker busting toward a more complex form of underground warfare that would define Pacific combat for the remainder of the war. The volcanic ash of Iwo Jima created an entirely different tactical environment when the 4th and 5th Marine Divisions landed on February 19, 1945. Lieutenant General Tadamichi Kuribayashi had spent 10 months transforming the 8-square-mile island into a fortress that incorporated lessons learned from every previous Pacific battle, including the cave warfare tactics that had proven so effective on Peleliu. Unlike the coral limestone of previous islands, Iwo Jima's volcanic rock could be excavated more easily, but provided even greater structural integrity for underground defensive positions. Kuribayashi's defensive plan abandoned beach defense entirely, instead concentrating his 21,000 troops in fortified positions throughout the island's interior. Mount Suribachi, the dormant volcano that dominated the southern end of the island, contained over 1,000 caves and tunnel positions connected by miles of underground passages. The northern plateau featured concrete bunkers and pillboxes integrated with natural rock formations, creating defensive positions that were virtually invisible from ground level until Marines approached within 50 yards of their firing positions. The Japanese commander had studied American assault tactics extensively, paying particular attention to the role of rocket launchers in bunker warfare. His defensive positions incorporated multiple design features specifically intended to defeat shape-charge weapons: reinforced concrete walls with steel backing plates, narrow firing slits that could be sealed with steel shutters, and tunnel systems that prevented blast effects from reaching interior chambers. Most significantly, many positions featured false walls and dummy emplacements designed to absorb rocket attacks while concealing the actual defensive positions. Sergeant Turner's bazooka team landed on Red Beach 1 with the 28th Marines, carrying the improved M9A1 launcher along with 12 M6A3 rockets distributed among squad members. The volcanic sand created immediate mobility problems, as Marines sank ankle-deep with each step, while struggling uphill under fire from positions that remained completely invisible despite intensive preliminary bombardment. Naval gunfire had cratered the beach approaches, but left most Japanese positions intact, protected by 30 feet of volcanic rock and reinforced concrete. The first rocket engagement occurred on February 21st during the assault on Motoyama Airfield No. 1. Turner identified what appeared to be a concrete pillbox positioned to enfilade the airfield approaches, with a firing embrasure approximately 18 inches wide, facing the Marine advance. The position had been engaging advancing infantry with sustained machine gun fire, killing 6 Marines and wounding 11 others during the previous hour. Artillery strikes had been called against the target without visible effect, leaving infantry assault as the only remaining option. Jenkins loaded a fresh M6A3 rocket, while Turner established a firing position behind a destroyed Japanese aircraft, approximately 75 yards from the target. The shape-charge warhead now contained 4.5 pounds of Composition B explosive, representing a significant increase in destructive power over earlier rocket types. Turner aimed directly at the center of the firing embrasure, accounting for the slight upward slope and minimal crosswind. The electrical firing system functioned perfectly, sending the rocket toward its target at 860 feet per second. The rocket struck the concrete wall directly adjacent to the embrasure, penetrating 6 inches into the reinforced material before detonating. The shape charge created its characteristic jet of superheated gases and molten metal, but instead of penetrating into an interior chamber, the blast encountered a steel backing plate that had been installed specifically to defeat such attacks. The explosion created significant surface damage and temporarily suppressed defensive fire, but the bunker remained structurally intact and combat effective. Japanese defenders inside the position had experienced something entirely different from previous American attacks. Private First Class Kenji Nakamura, manning the Type 92 machine gun, described the rocket impact as creating a thunderous roar that filled the bunker with smoke and metallic fragments. The blast wave stunned all 3 crew members temporarily, but the steel backing plate had prevented penetration into their fighting chamber. More importantly, the explosion triggered their practiced withdrawal protocol, moving the crew through a prepared tunnel to an alternate firing position 40 yards away. The tactical implications became apparent as Turner's squad attempted to advance after the rocket attack. Instead of finding a destroyed bunker, they encountered renewed machine gun fire from a completely different direction, forcing them to seek cover while trying to identify the new threat location. The Japanese had effectively used the bazooka attack as a signal to implement their defensive repositioning, maintaining continuous fire while avoiding destruction of their personnel and equipment. This tactical adaptation represented a fundamental shift in bunker warfare that American forces had not anticipated. The pattern repeated throughout the northern plateau as bazooka teams discovered that many apparent bunkers were elaborate deceptions designed to draw rocket fire away from actual defensive positions. Concrete facades had been constructed over natural rock formations, creating convincing targets that absorbed shaped charge attacks without protecting any real military assets. Meanwhile, the actual defensive positions remained camouflaged and undetected until Marine infantry approached within hand grenade range of carefully concealed firing points. Lieutenant General Sarasu Senda's 2nd Independent Mixed Brigade had prepared extensively for rocket launcher attacks based on detailed intelligence reports from Peleliu and Saipan. His defensive positions incorporated multiple layers of deception and structural redundancy specifically designed to survive the focused blast effects of shaped charge weapons. Primary firing positions featured steel-reinforced concrete walls up to 4 feet thick, while secondary positions remained completely hidden until needed for tactical repositioning. The improved M6A3 rockets did achieve notable successes against certain target types during the Iwo Jima campaign. Standard concrete bunkers without specialized anti-bazooka modifications remained vulnerable to direct hits, particularly when rockets could be delivered through firing embrasures or entranceways. Several Japanese positions were completely destroyed when shaped charges penetrated ammunition storage areas or fuel supplies, creating secondary explosions that conventional infantry weapons could never have achieved. These successes provided psychological benefits for American troops while demonstrating the weapon's continued tactical value. Combat engineers working with bazooka teams developed new techniques for engaging heavily fortified positions during the battle's 3rd week. Multiple rocket attacks against the same target often achieved cumulative damage that single shots could not accomplish, gradually weakening structural supports until demolition charges could complete the destruction. Some teams began using rockets to create breach points for flamethrower operations, allowing napalm-thickened fuel to be injected directly into tunnel systems through shaped charge penetrations. The ammunition consumption rates for rocket launcher operations increased dramatically as Marine units adapted to the challenges of cave warfare. Turner's Rifle Company expended over 60 rockets during the first week of operations, compared to fewer than 20 rounds during similar periods on previous islands. This consumption reflected both the increased number of targets and the necessity for multiple rocket attacks against individual positions to achieve meaningful tactical results. Japanese casualties from direct rocket hits remained relatively low throughout most of the campaign, but the psychological pressure of continuous bazooka attacks created significant morale problems among defending units. The sound of approaching rockets triggered immediate anxiety responses even among veterans who had survived multiple bombardments, while the unpredictable nature of shaped charge penetration made previously safe positions feel vulnerable. This psychological warfare effect accumulated over weeks of continuous combat, contributing to the gradual breakdown of Japanese defensive cohesion that ultimately determined the battle's outcome. The final assault on Mount Suribachi began at dawn on March 26, 1945, with Sergeant Turner's bazooka team attached to the lead elements of the 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines. 36 days of continuous combat had reduced the Japanese garrison from 21,000 to fewer than 3,000 effective fighters, but these survivors occupied the most formidable defensive positions on the island. Lieutenant General Kurabayashi's final command post lay deep within the volcanic rock, connected to dozens of cave positions through tunnels that had never been mapped or fully understood by American intelligence. The rocket launcher tactics that had evolved during 5 weeks of cave warfare represented a fundamental transformation in infantry assault doctrine. Turner now carried 24 rockets distributed among his squad members, more than double the standard loadout from earlier campaigns. Each rocket represented not a single target engagement, but part of a systematic process designed to create cumulative damage against positions that could not be destroyed by individual shots. The M6A3 shaped charges had proven most effective when used in coordinated volleys, with multiple rockets targeting different aspects of the same defensive complex. The psychological dimension of bazooka warfare had become as important as its physical destructive capability. Japanese survivors from captured positions consistently reported that the sound of approaching rockets created immediate panic responses, even among veterans who had endured weeks of artillery bombardment. The weapon's signature whoosh differed distinctly from mortar or artillery rounds, arriving with minimal warning and creating focused blast effects that penetrated supposedly secure positions. This psychological pressure had accumulated over the entire campaign, contributing to the gradual breakdown of Japanese defensive coordination. Corporal Hiroshi had survived longer than most of his original bunker crew, moving between positions as American forces systematically destroyed the defensive network around Mount Suribachi. His current position was a natural cave that had been reinforced with concrete and steel, featuring multiple escape routes and alternate firing positions designed to survive rocket attacks. The psychological strain of constant threat had affected him profoundly. Every distant sound triggered automatic preparation for rocket impact, while sleep became impossible due to recurring dreams of shape charge explosions penetrating his protective walls. The tactical coordination between bazooka teams and other assault elements had reached unprecedented levels of sophistication by the campaign's final phase. Turner's team worked in direct communication with flamethrower operators, demolition specialists, and tank crews, creating integrated assault packages that could adapt to different defensive configurations as they were encountered. When rockets failed to achieve penetration, flamethrowers would inject napalm through shaped charge breach points. When blast effects proved insufficient, demolition teams would place satchel charges against structurally weakened sections of bunker walls. The ammunition logistics for rocket launcher operations had evolved into a specialized supply chain that consumed significant resources throughout the campaign. Each Marine Rifle Company now maintained stocks of over 100 rockets, with additional supplies held at battalion and regimental levels for sustained operations. Combat consumption averaged 8 to 12 rockets per bunker engagement, with some heavily fortified positions requiring 20 or more rockets before achieving tactical success. This consumption rate represented a fundamental shift in infantry firepower doctrine, with shape-charge weapons consuming a larger portion of assault ammunition than traditional rifle and machine gun rounds. Japanese defensive adaptations had reached their practical limits by the campaign's final weeks, as resource constraints prevented further improvement of bunker construction or tactical modifications. Many positions now featured elaborate deception measures designed to waste American rockets on false targets, but these efforts required materials and labor that were no longer available. More significantly, the constant psychological pressure of rocket attacks had degraded Japanese defensive effectiveness, even when physical damage remained minimal. The breakthrough moment came during the assault on Hill 362 East, when Turner's team achieved direct penetration of a major Japanese command bunker that had been directing defensive fire throughout the northern sector. The position featured reinforced concrete walls over 3 feet thick, multiple firing embrasures, and steel backing plates designed to defeat shape charge attacks. Turner's solution involved systematic targeting of structural weak points where walls met roof lines, using 6 rockets to create cumulative damage that finally breached the bunker's defensive envelope. The shape charges penetrated into the command chamber at 14:30 hours, killing 5 Japanese officers, including a YA battalion commander, and destroying radio equipment that had been coordinating defensive fire across multiple positions. The loss of command and control capability created immediate tactical confusion among nearby defensive positions, allowing Marine infantry to advance through areas that had been impassable for weeks. This single rocket engagement demonstrated how bazooka attacks could achieve strategic effects far beyond their immediate destructive capability. The final Japanese resistance collapsed systematically as American forces applied lessons learned throughout 36 days of cave warfare. Bazooka teams now operated as specialized assault elements rather than general support weapons, with detailed intelligence about target construction and specific ammunition loads tailored to different defensive configurations. The weapon had evolved from an improvised bunker-busting tool into the centerpiece of a comprehensive assault doctrine that integrated multiple weapon systems into coordinated attack packages. Japanese prisoners captured during the final week consistently described their terror at the sound of approaching rockets, even when their positions had proven resistant to shape charge penetration. The psychological warfare effect had become self-reinforcing, with the mere presence of bazooka teams forcing Japanese defenders to abandon advantageous positions or modify their tactics in ways that reduced defensive effectiveness. This intangible impact often proved more valuable than the physical destruction achieved by individual rocket hits. The statistical analysis of bazooka effectiveness throughout the Iwo Jima campaign revealed significant improvements in hit probability and target destruction compared to earlier Pacific operations. Penetration rates against concrete bunkers exceeded 90% when proper tactics were employed, while even unsuccessful hits often achieved tactical suppression that enabled follow-up assault elements to advance. The weapon had proven its value not as a standalone bunker destroyer, but as an integral component of combined arms assault tactics. Turner survived the final assault and walked off Iwo Jima on March 27th, carrying his M9A1 launcher for the last time in combat. His after-action report noted that the psychological impact of rocket weapons often exceeded their physical destructive capability, with Japanese defenders frequently abandoning strong positions after sustaining rocket attacks that caused minimal actual damage. The shape charge principle had transformed infantry assault doctrine by providing squad-level commanders with the capability to engage fortified positions directly, reducing dependence on artillery and naval gunfire support that might not be available during critical tactical moments. The legacy of Pacific bazooka operations extended far beyond the immediate tactical victories achieved on specific islands. American infantry had learned to combine portable rocket launchers with demolitions, flamethrowers, and tank support in ways that could defeat any defensive position, regardless of construction materials or structural strength. When infantrymen with bazookas replaced sheer courage with shape-charged science, the concrete walls of Japan's island defenses stopped being impregnable fortresses and became penetrable barriers that could be systematically destroyed by determined assault teams.